You're listening to the Believe in Giants podcast with two-time Super Bowl winner Carl Banks and the voice of the Giants, Bob Papa.
Welcome to another edition of Believe in Giants. Bob Papa, two-time Super Bowl champion Carl Banks. This edition presented by FanDuel. And Carl, the dust has settled of the 9 vacancies that were open in the National Football League. The Giants first to strike, as John Harbaugh will become the 21st head coach in the history of the Giants. The news broke, around midnight last night. Mm-hmm. You texted me and you were all fired up. You're like, all right, when are we doing the pod tomorrow?
Yeah.
When are we doing the pod? What's got Carl Banks so pumped?
I just love the fact that there is a real football guy, the best coach available on the market, a coach that's a championship coach, a coach that understands a winning standard, not in philosophy, but actually in practice. And he's super successful. And you can say this about a lot of coaches, and I like to think it's all of them, but he is truly a football man. Raised in a football family. His father, Jack, recruited me unsuccessfully to go to University of Michigan. We always joke about that when I see him. They sent the B team to recruit me, and Jack had to try to clean it up, and he couldn't get it done in time. But just having seen the Harbaugh family growing up in Michigan, knowing, having played against Jim, and just the whole, I don't want to say aura, but the respect that the Harbaugh family has in both the college and pro communities is a major plus for the Giants. And I know that this is the type of thing that Giants fans wanted. They need it. There's an instant credibility. So I'm super excited about John Harbaugh being the new head coach of the New York Giants. I just think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be pleasing watching a guy that, like I said, he knows what a winning standard is. He has coached some of the greatest players to play the game. So there are going to be some non-negotiables to start with. And I think the culture shock will probably catch some guys off guard, but they're going to quickly embrace it because his players, the guys that play for him, they all love playing for him, right? But there's a standard set. And once you break through that threshold, you're going to enjoy football. You're going to enjoy what winning football is about. You're going to enjoy what competitive every game looks like, right? I think being the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL with the talent that's on that roster defensively will be completely unacceptable. It won't be negotiable. It won't be, we're going to stay stuck here and hope we can make a few plays every game. His teams have always gotten better. And you don't look for 11 all-stars, right? If you can count 5 to 6 good players on each side of the ball, you got a really good nucleus to win football games. And the other part I love about this hire is that there's not a single assistant coach in the league that won't come play for him, right? Correct. He has that credibility. It's not, a young guy who's hoping to put together a staff, he's going to put together a really good staff. And he's got some tools to work with on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Giants were the only team that he had scheduled to go to them, right? Tennessee was going to come to him. Atlanta was going to come to him. And there were reports out there. Ian O'Connor just killed it through this whole thing. He's obviously extremely well-sourced, accurate, great reporter. And, there was reports about Harbaugh even before he got fired. He could sense what was going on in Baltimore. He could sense that they may not even make the playoffs. He could sense that maybe it's coming to an end, just like it came to an end for Andy Reid, and it's come to an end for many of them. And he was interested in the Giant job. And those who were well-sourced said that he had said, I could see myself with the Giants. I mean, and look, this is a guy that 2 out of every 3 years his team has made the playoffs over 18 years. He's only had one season in which he didn't win at least 8 games. 2015, they had a 5-win team that season. He's got a winning record in the playoffs. He's been to the playoffs 12 out of 18 years. He wins his regular season games at 61.4%. And we talked a lot, Carl, about the standard. And for guys coming in, right? Well, what's the standard? Well, it's the standard that they learned while being on somebody else's staff. And some guys are able to translate that and in conjunction with what they view as the standard and meld that into a successful program. Dan Campbell has done that in Detroit. We're seeing Mike McDonald doing that with Seattle. Kellen Moore is only in the first year, so we also see how these things go one way or another. I mean, Ben Johnson and even Kellen Moore in New Orleans. This is a guy that doesn't have to guess or piece together what that standard looks like. He's got 18 years of doing it to a certain level. And you mentioned it'll be a culture shock for some guys. There are going to be some guys that are going to wind up being out the door. I mean, let's not kid ourselves, because not everybody will embrace it. Not everybody will buy in. And not to mention, as you well know, Carl, when Bill Belichick went to Cleveland, what did he do? He brought in Carl Banks. He brought in Pepper Johnson, because they always look to bring in people that truly understand what their culture is all about to help lead the way for the players that are searching and trying to understand it.
Yeah, and, I call those brand evangelists, right? When you've been a part of something and the coach knows the type of player that he wants to be in the locker room with a very young, talented team. They're not bringing in guys to be spies and all of that. These coaches have been around long enough, and certainly Coach Harbaugh has. He knows what personalities are. He knows how to deal with a vast array of personalities. He can deal with the mercurial types. He can deal with just about any type of personality, because they've had them in Baltimore, and he's been able to get the most out of them. I think when you bring in a player or two or three from a system that knows your cadence, they're just there to give the other players the reason why it works and the success that they have, and they can talk to those types of things. But the good news is there are a lot of players on this Giant roster who are not afraid of the work. There are some players that have been in a system, this one, so long they don't know what it's like anymore, right? You have, players on this roster that have come from some really successful college programs. And the good news is a guy like Jackson Dart, who's the leader of your team, he's only 2 years removed from, knowing what it feels like to win. A guy like Malik Neighbors, all he's ever known is winning, right? So he's not jaded just yet, right? And now he can resume what is required and what was required of him at LSU to be a great football team, to be the best receiver or one of the best receivers in the nation. Like, and then there you got some old dogs that's got to learn some new tricks, that have kind of settled into this is what they are. But there are going to be some that are not afraid to work. And others, the ones that, want to feel like they can operate the way they've continued to operate, there's going to be a bit of a culture shock. But, if they're truly interested in winning football games and maximizing their skill set, they'll adapt and they're going to be great as a result of it.
We talk about the organization, right? A proud organization that has fallen on some really rough times over the last 10 years. But still the brand, still what the organization stands for as one of the pillar franchises in the NFL certainly showed itself in this process, right? Because John Mara, who is not only in charge of the Giants, but has also been heavily involved in many league matters, whether it's the competition committee, the management council, and so many other committees that he sat on. Carl, you know this. When they have the owners' meetings, there's coaches are at the owners' meetings. Yep. And there's a lot of interaction between people. And as John Harbaugh has grown in stature from when he was first hired as the head coach to a Super Bowl winning coach, there's tons of interaction. So it's not like when John Harbaugh came to interview for the Giants, like he was meeting John Mara for the first time.
Right.
Or Steve Tisch for the first time. So the brand certainly helped carry the day with all of this, in that everybody in the league respects the Mara family and the Tisch family and what the Mara family means, just with the fact that Wellington is on every football, the Duke. Yeah. And that's not lost on NFL people. And that's one of the things that certainly made this job extremely attractive. And I think another thing that made this job extremely attractive is the role of Chris Mara in all this, right? We got the report that he went down to Baltimore and visited with the Harbaughs at their home for lunch. And I know that there's been a lot of circles, and there's, on these chat rooms and stuff like that have raged because of the football that the Giants have produced over a long period of time, over the last 10 years. And, sometimes Chris Mara's name gets thrown around, but I don't think people really know his resume. And the fact that he left the organization and ran the most successful scouting service that more than half the teams in the NFL, before teams invested as much as they do in scouting, relied on his scouting service. The fact that Coughlin wanted him to be his GM when he first started in Jacksonville and was starting up that program. So John Harbaugh has been around a long time. He knows who Chris Mara is. He knows Chris Mara's work. He knows what Chris Mara has accomplished in the business with the scouting service. And I think that also probably served as a really nice comfort level for an incoming head coach to know that, hey, I got a guy that's in ownership.
A football guy.
That we all, he's a football guy. And, Chris was, it's been written a lot, and Ian O'Connor did all the reporting about how Chris really wasn't nearly as involved as a lot of people perceived or believed he was. And it didn't really matter what his title was. He was serving the role that was deemed for him to serve. But I think Chris Mara's expertise in the scouting world certainly was a very net positive as far as John Harbaugh and the comfort level.
Yeah, I'm going to choose not to go too far down the rabbit hole of some of the awful things that people have said about the team ownership, because it's coming from a place of frustration from the fans, and they don't know where to source or where to aim, right? And so they aim at the top. But when the dust settled, you got the coach, the best coach in the market, one of the most successful coaches over the last decade and a half. And you see what the industry and how the industry feels about the ownership and the involvement of people with the last name of Mara. So hopefully this is something that the fans can say, okay, looks like we got this right. Let's get behind the program. Let's be positive about a coach with a resume like that of Coach Harbaugh. Remove the focus away from who the coach is. Now let's look at who the assistants will be. What type of schematics will there be? And then focus on the opportunity within a division that is, for the most part, shown how vulnerable it is. Washington got a head start 2 years ago and took the league by storm, right? Schedule is what it is. I don't talk about week or strength of schedule because it's the week to week, who's healthy and who's not. And everyone said, oh, wow, Washington's out of here. Cliff Kingsbury has done a great job. But what people didn't realize, Washington hit about 4 half-court shots during that season, about 5 half-court shots, basically just throwing the ball up, and they found the lucky or the fortunate.
Right, and they signed a bunch of older players that they got really good years out of.
Right, and you can't. I don't begrudge them. You create your own luck, all of that stuff, right? And
love Dan Quinn.
Yeah, but here we are. What seemed to be, magic in the making for decades. Cliff Kingsbury's now finding himself out again. Right, so they've got to find an offensive coordinator that can uncork the magic of Jaden Daniels. They've got to find younger players all across their roster. They're
interviewing defensive coordinators. They got rid of their DC as well.
Yeah. So, and then you have Dallas, who was just phenomenal on offense this year, but couldn't score enough points to keep the other team off the field because their defense was so bad. And they upgraded some personnel, but the back end of their defense just doesn't seem to be. So my point is, and then there's Philadelphia, is by default the best in the division. And you could see if you had anything that you can compete with them, they were not the same team as they were the last 5 years. And so there's opportunity, and they're looking for a new offensive coordinator as well, to try to figure out what Jalen Hurts is and isn't, which is, it's really perplexing to me. He became the focal point of, things that a quarterback can't do, and they had to simplify all of these things. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't feel bad for them at all, but I just find it amazing that the guy had 4 offensive coordinators and he had success with some and not with others. So it just doesn't speak to the fact that he can't do certain things because he's been in 4 different offenses. But like I said, I ain't crying for them. I'm rooting for the Giants to step in and make a mark, because here's what we do know. The Giants can compete, but their attention to detail was crappy. The fact
they didn't blow all those leads against good teams by not being able to compete at all. It's not like last year and the previous year where they could barely get it across midfield. They could barely score points.
Correct.
And maybe they can hang in a game and kick a bunch of field goals. Like they went against, and they played a really tough schedule this year. Look at the teams that they had double-digit leads against. They led by 18 points against the number 1 seed in the AFC, the Denver Broncos, on the road.
Yeah.
With 6.5 minutes to go.
Yeah, and it wasn't like Denver was having an off game. The Giants were having a good game. You got Chicago. They were literally, you caught them in their playoff run, their run up to the playoffs, and had an opportunity to close that out. Been Green several
Bay,
of those
Detroit.
Games. Detroit,
go on,
Green Bay, right? So if you're Coach Harbaugh and you have an opportunity, which he will, he's going to evaluate all of these games, but then he gets to get these guys from day one. He doesn't have to try to fix it on the fly like Charlie Bullen did, right? He can now emphasize the attention to detail, the importance of 4 quarters of play, and also having coordinators who have their finger on the pulse of the game, knowing what's needed, knowing how to utilize your talent, right? Charlie Bullen gives you some insight to what real skillful defensive coordinators and some with much more experience than him can do when you have a Dexter, a Burns, a Carter, and a Thibodeau, right? They will put those guys in action, different type of actions that will make it impossible to block them. Somebody is going to win. And the reason you'll see these types of things moving forward with this defense is because you got 4 individuals who can actually win on their own. So now when you start to put them in different actions together, they're already hard to block. If you put them in different actions, you're going to find the advantage and you're going to exploit the weak link. Kayvon Thibodeau is under contract, so I don't anticipate him going anywhere. And as long as he's on the roster and Burns and Carter are there, they're going to figure out how to get them on the field together. Because of those 3 guys I just named, Kayvon Thibodeau is the best run defender. So leaving him on the field is not a vulnerability for your defense, right? He's an every down guy. Carter can play off ball, on ball, and we saw what it looks like for Abdul Carter to be off the ball, but still at the line of scrimmage. Made a lot of plays off the ball, but he was always attacking the line of scrimmage. And that's, people have to kind of erase the perception of what an off-ball linebacker is. They're not sitting ducks. They're not traditional where you line up, it's a 3-4 or 4-3, and your guys just sit and wait for the ball to snap. You can do so many things pre-snap to predetermine what your guy can do in when the ball is snapped and just hitting a gap or playing the run. If this is where you're supposed to be, both run or pass. And so they can get that part of it figured out. Just excited that they've got the competency at a very, very high level. And I'm looking forward to seeing who their defensive coordinator is going to be. I'm also excited about this offense because John Harbaugh's offensive teams have always been kind to tight ends. Andrews is one of the top tight ends in the league, right? Can you imagine what that's going to look like with Daniel Bellinger, Theo Johnson, who will not have the drop problems that he's having this year because he will not be on the field if he does. Tight ends have always been reliable in the Harbaugh schemes. They're not known for dropping balls, even though Andrews let one get away in the cold in Buffalo a couple of seasons ago. Yeah, they've always had good, reliable tight ends.
Isaiah Likely.
You can rest assured that the inconsistencies that you see at that position, because it's such a focal point of what they do and what they've always done, they're going to be consistent. It's going to be a non-negotiable. And that is,
Right.
folks, what standards are about, right? It's just not going to be okay. And I don't know John Harbaugh to be a screamer, but his points get across and his teams reflect that. And so all the things that you see from players that are talented that will play crucial roles in a scheme, the inconsistencies will disappear. I assure you, they will not.
Or there'll be new players. There'll be new players doing it.
That is correct. And so, as talented as he is, I don't know what the future is for Fedone, but he's a young, talented, athletic kid. Just know that tight ends have always been a major part of John Harbaugh's offensive scheme. So the inconsistencies will not be accepted. They are counted on to make plays. And, that's the other trend also, Bob, in the NFL is what's old is new again. Tight ends have become the crunch time players. And I think I text you, and I give Robert Saleh so much credit, because in that Philadelphia game, when Philadelphia had to have it, they did not go to Brown. They did not go to Barkley.
Devontae Smith.
They did not go to Devontae Smith. They went to the tight end. And when you talk about, this is where you talk about really great defensive play calling and having your finger on the pulse of it. I bet if you go back and look at that play, either Smith, Barkley, or Brown were wide open, because what Robert Saleh did, he put three on the tight end. There was no way that ball was getting caught by the 10. When you see that ball thrown to the tight end, there are three defenders within 1 foot of him. So that just tells you the instincts and how real preparation comes into play, instead of us sitting in the booth saying, well, here's a must-have situation. They better make sure they cover the tight end. Like, real coordinators say, we're going to put this in our back pocket because we know when it's time to get it, you're going to go to a tight end. And they just said, we're putting three people on him, and if you can beat us another way, go for it. But yeah, the tight end position is important in this scheme, and the inconsistencies will disappear.
The other thing I like about this hire is that, and we talk about this during games, we talk about this with John Schmelk during games, as we sit in the booth. The one thing that we always had in our back pocket as calling these Giant games was, you felt that in a close game, in a game that wasn't going necessarily the Giants' way, in a game that might be going the Giants' way, but it was nip and tuck, you always felt like Tom Coughlin, and when I mean Tom Coughlin, I mean Tom Coughlin and staff, would figure out either a workaround, or when the game was on the line, strategically, they would be a chess move ahead of a lot of the teams that they play,
right,
and their head coach.
Right.
And we saw it play out a million times. Again, against young head coaches, whatever the case might be, even guys that were veteran head coaches that weren't necessarily great maneuvers of the chess piece in situational football. Coughlin's teams were good situational football. Now we're going to have games, we're going to go into it, and now we have the advantage again. Based on John Harbaugh winning 61.4% of his regular season games over an 18-year period, and taking 12 teams to the postseason, and having 11 double-digit win seasons, or whatever it is. You don't do that because you just always had the best players. You don't do that by luck. It means that at the end of the game, when it comes time to situational football and moving pieces on the board and being a step ahead to create checkmate, or at least check leading the checkmate. He's good at it. And finally, for the first time since Tom Coughlin left, the Giants will go into certain games with that decided advantage. And they haven't had that since Coughlin left.
Well, I can tell you another thing too, Bob, that will be a mystery solved. Special teams. Special teams, you will not have a kicker situation. And you will not be relying on, 50-50 chance a guy's going to show up for the game. You're not going to have the number one rated special teams in the league all of a sudden fall off the face of the earth. That's another area that Coach Harbaugh was really good. He cut his teeth as a special teams coach. And if you want to look at, you talk about all the things that his teams have done well, take a look at his special teams. He's always had really good special teams. So another culture shock, right? Guys who think they're just filling up a slot on special teams just to get a uniform, they won't. He's going to have guys out there who's hungry and ready to play because that's their only time to really impress the coaches. So it won't be one of these guys, oh, he's a big body, he can run, let's keep him around and develop him. Nope, you're going to have to be a really good special teams player too. And that's why good teams are good teams, because all three phases, they pay attention to detail. All three phases, they strive for consistency and they strive for excellence. And so whether they fall short of excellent or not, they're going to be one of the top teams in those categories. And, they just never stop getting better. They don't just settle. Like if you're at midseason and you're the 32nd ranked run defense or you're the 28th, you're not going down to 32nd. You're going up. You're going to find a way. They will find a way to get you out of the basement. This team went from 25 to 32nd and just sat there. And you look at the same players and you scratch your head, why? Brian Burns didn't get any worse. You gotta get more out of your guys, and they've got to have higher expectations, but they also have to have a plan, Bob. And I think a lot of that is important. And I think a lot of that, you could see the difference between what Charlie Bullen did versus Shane Bowen. But you're going to see it at a whole nother level now. You're going to see aggressive, chaos-creating players. You're not going to see players that are so multi-talented stuck in the missionary. They're going to be versatile. If you're versatile, your scheme's going to be versatile. And I'm just looking forward to the staff that he puts together, but I'm also looking forward to the transformation of this talent base. Guys are going to realize that they got more to give than they realized, right? Because you're the best player on the bad team. You can also be the best player on a good team when everybody else's skill set rises and you keep rising as well.
One of the other cool things about this whole thing is I know Tom Coughlin reached out to Coach Harbaugh. I know Coach Coughlin, just in all of my dealings with Coach Coughlin, I know he has a lot of respect for John Harbaugh as a coach, as a person. And everybody that I've talked to from Baltimore, I mean, as great a coach as he is, he's that much better a person. But the thing that I found interesting, and I haven't done any research on it, but I can't remember the last time that a coach that got fired during the season reached out to a potential replacement, because you're already fired, so you've been replaced. But the fact that Brian Dable reached out to him and gave him the skinny on Jackson Dart and gave him the skinny on the organization, is I've never heard of such a thing. I've never heard of a coach that got fired and 3 months later or 2 months later is reaching out to prospective candidates and endorsing anything about the organization.
Yeah, that's called character. Dave's has good character, but it also speaks well to what Giants ownership means to people, right? Once a Giant, always a Giant, it means something. And they make you feel that. You feel that working within that ecosystem. And again, results are what drives our fan base. But the relationship within the building, the results are not always there, but it's not necessarily a reflection of what's in the heart of these coaches and these owners. And yeah, you had a long stretch of down years, and hopefully that turns right away. But it just speaks to when you don't know the individual, and this is not blaming fans. Like I said, the frustration was so high they had nowhere else to shoot, but at ownership. But it just, when you take a step back and things have settled, you see that there's a high level of respect for Giants ownership in the way they treat and operate people. And I don't think, I know for a fact it's not a thing, they would never treat fans intentionally awful. Now, you've been treated to some bad football, you've been treated to some awful football, but never mistake that for an ownership that didn't care. It bothers them more than you guys realize. And again, this is not telling you how you should feel about things because it's emotional and you had nowhere else to vent, right? But now that you can take a step back, you can see that this is ownership group that care. They wanted to get you the best. They went out and got the best. It's not because of anything you guys said. It's because they care as much as fans do. They just are in a different mindset, a different level. And for fans who have to go through this on a weekly basis, they're going through it on a daily basis. They're looking for solutions. They want to get the thing right. And it's unfortunate that it got to this point where fans wrote love letters to their seats saying, this is going to be it for me. Our guy, Big Blue VCR, who just said, I can't anymore. Justin Pinnock wrote a letter to his seats. This will be it for me. And hopefully that invoice didn't get torn up and you can still submit your payment and get back into your seats and enjoy some football. But that was the state of the franchise. There was a hopelessness. And I really sincerely believe there's a reason for fans to have hope and to have optimism, not to be blinded. There are going to be some ups and downs, but your organization, from a head coaching perspective, is in the right hands. And, he understands personnel, how to use it. He will have input into the type of players he wants. They're paying him a lot of money. And I'm assuming he's going to have more than 2 years on his contract. So it's in everybody's best interest to involve him in the decisions of the type of personnel that he wants. He's a proven winner. He's not a guy who says, what do you think? He can tell you, this is what we need. This is the type of player we need. And he's also going to look at his roster and say, I don't need this type of player on my roster. Right? He's going to look at injury reports. He's going to look at guys who mysteriously just missed the last 4 games of the season. And with the same injury, sometimes they can play, sometimes they're going to look at all that. He's been through that. He's seen it before. So, yeah, he's going to have input in personnel. That's not I'm taking responsibility away from Joe Schoen because he can't do all of that. You can't be GM and coach. Just trust me when I tell you the work that goes into scouting players started last year for this year. And he's going to get information, but he's also got to figure out how to coach his team and put the best out there. So it's going to be a great collaboration, but he will have say in the type of player he wants. He's not going to be stuck with a player that you liked that he can't coach or that can't play in the types of schemes that they're putting forth. How do I know this? Because one of my best friends from high school, college, and he played in the pros was a scout for them for 12 years. He sat in those meetings, and he's told me about the conversations he would have with Ozzie Newsome and some of the other scouts, and talking about grades and talking about fits and how they get to the type of players that met the standard of what the Baltimore Ravens were, right? Healthy dialogue. And, if you guys want to know, his name is Lonnie Young. Look him up. But he gave me insight into what those personnel meetings are like, with the scouts and the player personnel folks. So, yeah, that's what's going to happen within this Giant organization now.
Yeah, I mean, we got 18 years to track record too to show it. Like either with Ozzie Newsome or with Eric DeCosta as the man who replaced the Hall of Famer. So, we always hear the word collaborative thrown around and all that other stuff. Yeah, there is collaboration that goes into it. And Harbaugh, he's going to have a lot of say in a lot of different areas, especially when it comes to the pro side, the pro personnel, because as you mentioned, the scout, it's been a year, 2 years worth of scouting these players where the head coach is focused on pro. And then they jump into the college evaluations late in the game. And sometimes that can become problematic. But from a pro side of things, he's going to be having a heavy hand in decision making because he knows what guys in the league can do and can't do and whether they're going to jive with what he wants.
Correct.
Anything else, Carl?
No, that's it. I guess, when they start to put the staff together, we can start to explore some of their greatest hits. And, just encouraging Giant fans to stay hopeful, focus on what can be done.
If you ain't hopeful now, then you're never going to be hopeful.
Yeah. If you got a guy with this track record and your organization went out and got him, it speaks to what he thinks about the organization, what he's going to give to you as fans and to this roster to make sure that the best product is on the field and a very competitive product.
Yeah, I mean, they beat out 8 suitors, not the 9 openings. Baltimore wasn't hiring him back. So there are 8 other teams looking. Some of them were not landing spots for him anyway. I don't think he was going to Pittsburgh in any stretch. And I'm sure he weeded out some of the others just based on his evaluation. So let's say there was 3 or 4. The Giants went first. The Giants were proactive. And the Giants went and got their man. And as many arrows, and rightfully so, as the organization has taken over the last 10 years, they did not only what you, the fan, and us have asked for, because how I've talked about this since the day Dable was fired. You know my opinion on it. Our audience knows my opinion on it. This was the time and place to get somebody in here with a real resume as a head coach.
Correct.
This is not the New York Giants could not be a starter job once again. And they went ahead and they got the best possible guy you could get on the market. And they went and they did it. And they didn't allow themselves to get beaten out by anybody.
That's
put their
correct.
best
They
foot
were
forward
proactive.
first.
Yep, they were proactive, and I think that made a difference.
All right, Carl. How do we like to end this thing?
Tell a friend to tell a friend. Believe in Giants.
Believe in Giants.